Good morning, everybody. Good morning. I know it's Monday. I will give members of the press a moment to get set up and get your shots set and check your audio. You want to just give me a thumbs up when you are good to go. There's no rush. WSB, do you mind if I reposition you slightly?
Don't mind a bit.
How was everyone's weekend? Subdued crowd. Hope you got some time with family. You guys all set? All good? Great. Well, good morning, and thank you all for being here at this morning's Oversight event. The second in 2 weeks as part of this ongoing investigation into Georgia's housing crisis. Today focused on the mistreatment and the reported abuse of Georgia renters. Let's reaffirm at the outset that we face a housing crisis across the state of Georgia and in Metro Atlanta. Rents are too high, home prices are too high. And so earlier this year, I launched an investigation into this housing crisis. And at an Oversight event last week, revealed the latest data from a Georgia State University study, which shows that large out-of-state companies now reportedly own 30% of all single-family rental homes in Metro Atlanta. Let me restate that from this Georgia State University study. Large out-of-state companies now reportedly owning 30% of all single-family rental homes in Metro Atlanta. That's up from 25% previously reported by the Government Accountability Office last year. Georgia families have reported to my office that they're being squeezed out of the housing market as large companies buy up Georgia homes in bulk and drive up home prices. And then the very same families who are priced out of the housing market because it is so dominated by these large out-of-state companies are forced to rent from these same companies, who in some neighborhoods own more than 90% of single-family rental homes. To date, as part of this investigation, my staff has interviewed more than 160 witnesses and sources, including housing policy experts, local officials, realtors, attorneys, renters, and prospective home buyers. And we have received many reports of mistreatment and abuse of renters by these large out-of-state corporate landlords, who again, according to this Georgia State University study, now own nearly 1 in 3 single-family rental homes in Metro Atlanta. Georgians have reported to my office being charged undisclosed junk fees, being charged for maintenance and repairs, which common decency and common sense should be covered by the property owner, being charged arbitrarily higher rents, and having their security deposits withheld without justification. Georgians have reported to my office that when they call their landlords to report erroneous charges or mysterious fees or maintenance requirements, nobody answers the phone. And in some cases, instead, they receive eviction notices. Georgia families have further reported to my office living in dangerous conditions for extended periods of time without attention or repair from their landlords. We've heard from Georgians who have tried for months and even years to have their heating, stoves, plumbing, or fallen ceilings repaired. Some of these Georgians took extraordinary, desperate measures, even risking eviction, just to get somebody on the line, just to get their landlord to respond. Today we'll learn more about reports of mistreatment and abuse of Georgia renters by large out-of-state corporate landlords. We'll hear from an attorney, Esther Graff Radford, who in her extensive practice has represented Georgians who rent single-family homes from these large out-of-state corporate landlords. And she will state and report her experience representing tenants who have been mistreated by large out-of-state corporate landlords. We'll also hear from two residents of single-family rental homes in Metro Atlanta, Patrick Coulson Price and Shaina Brooks Wilhight, who will describe their personal experiences dealing with this kind of mistreatment and abuse. And I want to sincerely thank both of you, particularly since we've received reports of wrongful eviction notices and threats of retaliation against those who speak out or demand proper service. I want to thank both of you for your courage in speaking out. For members of the press, I want to emphasize once again that this is an active and ongoing inquiry. I launched this investigation to bring transparency and accountability for Georgia homebuyers and Georgia renters, and to help lower home prices for my constituents. And my office is continuing to investigate the impact of large corporate landlords on Georgia homebuyers and the mistreatment of Georgia renters. I will now introduce our speakers. Ms. Esther Graff Radford is a tenants' rights attorney representing families here in Georgia. Mr. Coulson Price is a resident of Smyrna, Georgia, and Ms. Brooks Wilhight is a resident of Stockbridge, Georgia. I thank you all again for joining us and will now yield to you, Ms. Graff Radford, to describe your experience. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator. Good morning.
Good morning.
I'm Esther Graff Radford, and I run a private law firm that represents tenants in housing issues in Metro Atlanta and across the state of Georgia. I work closely with Legal Aid, the Atlanta Volunteer Lawyers Foundation, and local housing nonprofits, and I spend a lot of time educating the community and lawyers about tenant rights. The cases that I work on deal with landlords not repairing their properties, landlords retaliating against tenants who ask for repairs, housing discrimination, and unfair and deceptive business practices by landlords and management companies. Everything that I'm about to say, I know from sworn statements that I've taken from my clients and from the people who run these big out-of-state corporate landlords. My clients are preschool teachers, ministers, lunch ladies, bank clerks, foster moms, IT support folks. When they looked for an affordable house near their work or their kids' school, they found that only a few companies owned most of the rentals. If they wanted a house with a yard in the right school district, they were forced to rent from one of these big out-of-state rental companies. As landlords, these companies prioritize profit over my clients' safety. Their business model is to quickly purchase single-family homes, do a cursory inspection, rent the homes out as fast as possible, and squeeze families for rent and fees until they're evicted or move out. And then the process repeats. As a result, the houses are not properly inspected or adequately repaired before they're put on the rental market. The companies will make cosmetic fixes like a fresh coat of paint to make the houses look good for photos or for walkthroughs. But when my clients move in, they often discover gas leaks, a septic system that's backing up into the house, sewage lines full of tree roots, termite damage, or water pouring in from the plumbing or from a roof that leaks. In my experience representing tenants, big corporate landlords often own thousands of houses in Georgia, but have only a handful of employees here, or none at all. Some of these companies outsource the oversight of repairs and maintenance to contractors overseas. So the person responsible for making sure that the hot water heater was safely repaired may have never set foot in the US, much less in that rental house. The companies prioritize getting the cheapest bids for repairs. My clients miss days of work as different vendors show up at their homes, take pictures, make estimates, and fail to repair the problem. These companies save thousands of dollars on labor because they force my clients to coordinate the maintenance and sometimes even to do the repairs themselves. Now, we're not talking about leaving work a little early to meet the plumber. We are talking about families using up all of their PTO and days off for the year so that the landlord can get the cheapest bid. Sometimes my clients lose their jobs because they can't work from home in a sewage flood or miss any more days of work waiting for repairs. When work is done, these companies usually don't inspect to make sure it was done correctly. They leave that to the tenants as well. Tenants with no expertise in home repairs have to hope that the gas leak was fixed or that their stove is now safe to use. Under Georgia law, the landlord is responsible for maintenance and repairs. But these big corporate landlords will threaten tenants with fines and even eviction if the tenant doesn't do that work for them. And they don't just cut corners on maintenance. Many of them have no system to verify that late fees and charges are correct before they issue threatening letters or eviction notices to my clients. Instead, these are automatically generated in bulk and dropped into families' lives like tiny bombs. My clients are traumatized when they get eviction notices for money they don't owe. Then they have to spend hours on the phone fixing bookkeeping that the landlord should have done before they threaten to make a family homeless. My clients are often forced to pay these wrongful late fees and penalties. Taking a stand and refusing to pay several $100s in wrongful repair charges or late fees can cost you an eviction on your record or get you blacklisted from all the affordable single-family rental homes in your area. These companies are not being held accountable, even by local code enforcement or other authorities. Families get exhausted fighting for every repair and contesting every wrongful charge. Many of them have to move because the repair problems become dangerous. When my clients move out, the repairs often remain undone. The sewage is still backing up. The air conditioning still doesn't work. The roof is still leaking. The plumbing's still a mess. The over-automation has not changed. The landlord slaps a new coat of paint on the walls, often charging the tenant for it, and moves the next unsuspecting family in. This is not going to change until we hold these large corporate landlords accountable and stop allowing them to shift their costs to Georgia families.
Thank you, Esther.
Thank you, Sam.
Coulson Price.
Thank you so much. Of course. All right. Good morning, Senator Ossoff. Thanks for having me today. My name is Patrick Coulson Price. I live in Smyrna, Georgia, with my husband. He's an Air Force veteran. And we have 3 dogs in a rented home that is currently owned and managed by Invitation Homes. We moved into our home a few years ago looking for a sense of stability, a place where we could feel at ease, but that peace was quickly replaced by concern, eventually exhaustion, as we uncovered serious safety issues in our yard. In April 2023, our dog London came inside with a cut on her paw. When I went to investigate in the backyard, I found large shards of glass around 5 to 6 inches tall sticking up through the grass. As I looked further, I found even more shards, not only glass, but long, sharp nails, razor blades, batteries, oyster shells, and other sharp debris. I did not only find these dangerous objects where my dogs had been playing, but as I walked around the yard, I found debris and glass all over the yard. Over the first 2 years living in this home, these discoveries became more routine. And since the first piece of glass I noticed back in 2023, I've picked up over about 500 to 600 pieces of glass. I reported the issues immediately to my then landlord and submitted multiple work orders and emails, but nothing was done. When Invitation Homes took over our property in January of 2024, I had hoped for some change. But between January and April 2024, I estimated that I emailed them about 30 to 40 times, sharing photos, videos, and even showing up to their offices here in Atlanta with a big bucket of broken glass so they could see exactly what I was dealing with. The response was minimal. Eventually, in April of 2024, Invitation Homes sent out a vendor to inspect the yard, but the vendor brought rakes, which wasn't enough. They raked and picked up glass in 2 spots in the yard and left the remaining glass untouched. Despite my ongoing reports, Invitation Homes repeatedly marked my work orders as complete, even though the glass and debris still remained there. I gave up on filing new ones for several months due to exhaustion, stress, and honestly just feeling powerless. For over 2 years, my husband and I had not been able to use our yard safely. We had to supervise our dogs every single time they needed to go outside. Mowing the lawn was impossible due to the fact that risk of sharp debris might be thrown up from the blades. And what should have been a simple outdoor space for us and our dogs to enjoy, which is part of our rented property, became a constant source of stress. We couldn't have people over to use our yard, and we were worried all the time when our dogs were in the backyard. Just imagine the danger if we had a young kid who could step on a nail, cut their foot on a piece of glass while they're playing in the backyard. In early 2025, we welcomed a new puppy, and that issue of the worry of being cut on a piece of glass came into sharper focus. I couldn't bear the thought of her getting hurt like our older dog had, and that's when I picked the issue back up, filing new work orders, and again, seeing the same pattern of inaction. Work orders marked as complete when the problem still remained. In March of 2025, I eventually contacted the city of Smyrna and local news outlets to share my issue. The city issued a citation to Invitation Homes for unsafe conditions in the yard. But when Invitation Homes failed to respond within that time frame the city had given, the city escalated the issue and filed civil litigation. That was the turning point. After that, the city and Invitation Homes drafted a plan to bring the yard up to minimum code requirements. Vendors were sent out to grade the yard, and while doing so, they uncovered several buried tires, additional debris, automotive equipment, including more glass. Even after grading, I noticed more sharp glass, sometimes buried just beneath the surface. Invitation Homes seeded and laid hay over most of the yard following grading work, but I continued to find more glass beneath that hay. At that point, the city required sod to be laid over the entire yard. That work was completed in April, and even now, in certain parts of the yard, I still find more glass. Invitation Homes has marked our work orders as complete, and the city recently informed me that the property now meets minimum code requirements, and they closed the case. But for us, the issue hasn't gone away. It's simply been covered over. Even so, as mentioned, I was charged $96 for yard maintenance, a charge that Invitation Homes' local offices said they would remove from my ledger, which they eventually did after almost a dozen phone calls and emails. The stress of trying to get in contact to their multiple offices and divisions to remove these charges was its own multi-week struggle. Additionally, a $35 HOA violation fee was charged to our ledger. We don't live in an HOA, and we dealt with the same headache of trying to get it removed. We're leaving this property at the end of our lease in June. It's been a long 3 years, but I worry about the next tenants. I worry if they'll be told what was once buried just beneath the grass, or if they have a child who will step on something extremely sharp. I'm speaking publicly today because tenants deserve to feel safe where they live. We deserve to feel heard when we report a problem, and we shouldn't have to fight for years just to get the basic needs addressed. It's interesting, whenever you call Invitation Homes, their automated message begins with "ready to live freer?" ? But for more than 3 years, that has not been our experience. We felt restricted, ignored, unsafe, right in our own backyard. I do hope sharing my story, it can help shine light on the importance of accountability and encourage stronger protections for tenants everywhere. And everyone deserves a home where they can feel at peace, not just in theory, but in practice. Thank you. Appreciate it. Thank you.
Good morning, Senator Ossoff. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to share my story today. My name is Shaina Brooks Wilhight, and I'm a disabled U.S. Navy veteran, a working mother, and a resident of Stockbridge, Georgia. I live with my son in a home rented from Invitation Homes. When I moved into my house in March 2023, I was excited to make this house my home. I took pride in keeping it clean, decorating it, and adding my personal touches. It finally felt like a place my family could breathe, settle, and build something long-term. But everything changed in early December 2024. One morning, I woke up to a strange beeping sound. I didn't know what it was at first. As I was headed downstairs to check on my son, the alarm system that I had installed on the house went off, warning us of carbon monoxide. I panicked. I opened every window and door I could. Trying to stay calm for my son, we ran outside. I had never experienced a gas leak before. I didn't know what else to do, but I knew it wasn't safe to be in the house. I called Invitation Home maintenance line to report the emergency. Instead of urgent help, I was routed to an overseas call center, where the representative politely scheduled me for the next available appointment, 3 weeks out. I told her it was a carbon monoxide emergency. She didn't escalate the call. She didn't change her response. She just said, "That's all we have." So I called Atlanta Gas Light. They arrived in 30 minutes. They inspected the home and found 2 major gas leaks, one on the stove and another in the fireplace. They shut the gas and they told me not to use the fireplace under any circumstances, calling it an extreme fire hazard. I forwarded their report to Invitation Homes and called again, this time demanding to speak to the maintenance manager. When I did, I was met with complete indifference. She told me, "We have too many houses and not enough staff to go to every house that claims that they have an emergency." I told her it wasn't a claim, it was a confirmed gas leak. She told me that the gas had been shut off to the stove, so I was apparently safe. And she actually suggested if I wanted to use the fireplace, I should open the window. I asked her, "What kind of sense does that make? It's freezing. My family's trying to stay warm." She paused, then coldly repeated, "That's the earliest appointment we have." Invitation Homes did not repair the gas leak until January 6th of this year. My family lived for over 3 weeks with no stove and no heat. During the holidays, we had to eat out every day, which put enormous stress on our household budget. I had to pay a $249 gas bill, which was double than what I normally pay, and I spent $265 more just to heat my home. Even when Invitation Homes sent out a technician out around Christmas, they sent someone who wasn't even equipped to fix the issue, even though they knew I had no working stove. That visit caused more delays. The technician walked in, assessed the situation, then repeated the same thing I had been saying for 3 weeks. "This is an emergency." That's their pattern. They send someone to assess, then schedule another appointment to maybe repair, and then another appointment after that. They took the cheapest solution, and they didn't care how long it leaves tenants in an unsafe and unaffordable situation. But those delays, they cost us more than they cost them. We're not humans to them, we're dollar signs. I felt so desperate that I withheld my rent, not to be defiant, but in hopes that someone from the property management team would finally reach out to me and repair the gas leak. And instead of support, I was issued a 3-day pay or quit notice. That was their response. Not concern, not accountability, just a reminder that I had no power and that I was at their mercy. I quickly paid my rent. And in that moment, I felt completely worthless and small because they're a big multi-million-dollar corporation, and I'm just a disabled veteran trying to provide and protect my family. And I didn't stand a chance. Senator Ossoff, I'm here today because this should never happen to another family. This wasn't just frustrating, it was traumatic, and it's happening to people all across Georgia. We need emergency response protocols for landlords, mandatory safety inspections for gas lines, fireplaces, and carbon monoxide detectors, repair timelines with consequences for delays, transparent billings, and bans on unauthorized fees, and tenants' protections, especially for veterans, working family, and the disabled. Everything I said today is backed up by documentation, from email threads to service requests to code enforcement attempts to receipts and repair timeline. I done my part, I kept records, and I spoke up. I'm not just here to tell my story, I'm here to help fix the system. Please use my experience to bring accountability to landlords like Invitation Homes and to protect the thousands of Georgian families that are suffering in silence. Thank you for listening to my story.
Well, hours or a couple of days to send an eviction notice, but months or years to repair safety hazards. And my office has received many more reports such as these. Just imagine a young family, maybe with a newborn, thinking about a first step into home ownership. But most of the homes in the neighborhood have been bought up in bulk by an out-of-state company. So a home's not affordable. Choose instead to rent, but most of the homes in the neighborhood are owned by just a few large out-of-state companies. So as a renter, you have no power. You move into the home, you find a life-threatening safety hazard. 2-year-old daughter can't go play in the backyard because it's full of glass shards, or you're having to run out of the house at 4 in the morning because there's a gas leak. Report it to a large out-of-state corporate landlord, and then you have to wait months or over a year to get it repaired. Spending hours and hours and hours sending dozens of emails, making dozens of phone calls, and then you get hit by fees or threats of eviction. I'm so grateful to the three of you for sharing your experiences and speaking out today. And again, for members of the press, remember we're talking about just a few large out-of-state corporations who now own a vast share of single-family rental homes in Metro Atlanta. Nearly 1 in 3 single-family rental homes. And the purpose of today's event, just to be very clear for those of you who are reporting on this, is to expose the mistreatment of renters by large out-of-state corporate landlords who now own nearly 1 in 3 single-family rental homes in Metro Atlanta. My office will continue to investigate the mistreatment of Georgia renters. We seek to hear directly from Georgians who have been subjected to junk fees or unfair practices or maintenance delays while renting single-family homes from large out-of-state corporate landlords. I want to continue to encourage the public to contact me and my team of investigators. We have heard from so many of you. Please reach out at ossoff.senate.gov/home story. That's ossoff.senate.gov/home story. The reports and the personal testimonies are pouring in. Please raise your voices. It's confidential, and we will never make any of your information public without your consent, but it helps to inform this ongoing investigation. Thank you again for speaking today. Thank you to members of the press for joining us, and I'm happy to take questions from the press on this or any other subject.
Yeah, so Senator, first off, I mean, obviously you've been trying to take the lead. When can we actually expect some sort of legislation or some sort of changes to provide protections for folks like this?
Well, step one is to establish the facts and to bring transparency and public accountability. That record can inform legislative action at the county level, at the state level, or at the federal level. But step one is to conduct a thorough inquiry in order to fully establish what's happening and how we can address it, and also to bring immediate public pressure to bear on these large out-of-state companies who are buying up in bulk vast shares of the housing here in Georgia to provide better service.
So realistically, I mean, what can we do legislatively to try and stop stuff like this from happening?
Well, I think there are ample options for county officials, state officials, and federal legislators to address this issue. Good policy is founded on transparency and a clear and full understanding of the policy challenge. So I don't have a legislative timeline for you today. Step one is to establish these facts and to bring them into the public, and that's the purpose of this investigation.
Can I ask, I know in like the state...
Would you mind just, absolutely, would you mind just introducing yourself?
Yeah, absolutely. My name's Matt Reynolds, I'm with the AJC. I know the State House was considering several measures, including caps on out-of-state ownership of single-family rental homes, and also a rental registry, so it's easier to kind of track down those companies. Is that on the table for you? What are the specifics, I guess? What would you like to see? What legislation would you like to see passed in terms of specifics?
This is an active and ongoing inquiry in order to establish the facts and bring transparency to this issue. So legislation will follow the establishment of facts. That is the right way to make public policy. I'm pleased that this issue has attracted the attention of state legislators, just as I'm pleased that it's attracted the attention of the press and of investigative reporters. And I would be remiss if I didn't note that the investigative work already undertaken by the Atlanta Journal-Constitution has informed this ongoing investigation by my office, and I think has played a critical role in bringing the plight of Georgia renters and the impact on the housing market here in Georgia of this phenomenon into the public domain. Yes?
Hi, Ty Tagon from Capitol Beat. So we were talking about the state legislature. They did pass a law that requires at least local representatives for these companies. I guess in the past, you know, we've heard how difficult it is to reach them. They didn't all have representatives here in Georgia, and I'm wondering if that has had any impact, or if you think it will.
I think too soon to tell, but whether or not there has been some improvement is, you know, a valid part of the scope of this ongoing inquiry. And again, I appreciate and respect the interest in immediate legislation, but this is an active Senate investigation. And what I found, you know, for example, the significant long-term investigations that I led of corruption and civil rights abuses and mistreatment in the federal prison system laid the groundwork for bipartisan legislation that was well-founded, well-informed, and could attract bipartisan support. So we are still in the investigative phase.
So what should folks take away from, you know, we've heard from you multiple times in the last couple of weeks, and we've seen these stories. So what should people take away from these folks' stories, from this investigation, about when they can expect, you know, what may be coming up?
I think first of all, what's been established just in the last few weeks is the rapidly increasing scope of out-of-state corporations buying up homes in bulk here in Metro Atlanta and across the state. That Georgia State University study that we revealed last week, which found it's now nearly 1 in 3 single-family rental homes in Metro Atlanta owned by large out-of-state corporate landlords. The testimonies that you've heard today are focused on the mistreatment of renters by large out-of-state corporate landlords, the same large out-of-state corporate landlords who now own nearly 1 in 3 single-family rental homes in Metro Atlanta. This work will continue. We will have more to share with you in the days to come. The takeaway today is that you've heard compelling testimony from an active attorney, tenants' rights attorney, about the systemic nature of this, and individual stories to illustrate the mistreatment of renters by large out-of-state corporate landlords. The big picture here is that this has the full attention of my office and my team of investigators. We're working to bring these facts into public and to establish these facts so they can be the foundation for county ordinances, state legislation, or federal legislation as appropriate.
I see we've got a couple questions. Let's go to Donnell, then Jonathan O'Brien.
Senator, over here.
Hey Donnell, how you doing?
Donnell, South Atlanta Voice. Are you expecting a deluge of people to kind of come to your office or contact your office and speak their stories like Mr. Coulson Price did, Mrs. Wilhight did?
I have been surprised by the volume of reports and complaints and stories that Georgians are sending to my office since we opened the portal for submissions. So let me invite the public to continue to weigh in. I am your elected representative. I want to hear from you about this issue, and so I'll restate that members of the public can contact my team of investigators confidentially at ossoff.senate.gov/homestory. Thank you, Donnell.
Jonathan.
Jonathan O'Brien from WSB Radio. Senator, I know you were just talking about the portal opening. Do you know roughly how many folks have reached out to your office so far?
I don't, but I can get you that number. To date, the latest report I received is that the office has interviewed more than 160 witnesses and sources, some of whom are tenants, some of whom are prospective home buyers, some of whom are attorneys, policymakers, officials, investigators.
Are we able to go off topic and then
Yes.
this
Sure.
or the other topic? Senator, it's making headlines around the country, the situation at Emory Hospital, where there's a woman being kept alive on life support, a pregnant woman being kept alive on life support. They say they have to do it because of the state's abortion law. What's your reaction to that? And, you know, how are you, I know this has been an issue that you have championed. You've had hearings regarding women's reproductive rights. Talk about that.
Of course, I've seen the reports of what sounds like a horrific situation. I don't know in detail what the medical condition is or what the family's wishes are. So I'm not going to weigh in on the specific case. But in this very room, you have heard from Georgia OBGYNs and public health experts and advocates about how doctors and public health officials in Georgia have been forced, for example, to wait to provide care until pregnant women are life-threateningly sick. You've heard from pregnant women who have spoken publicly about how they were forced to carry high-risk or non-viable pregnancies against the best medical advice of their physicians because of the state law here in Georgia. But again, on this particular case, I've read the reports. It's a horrific situation. I don't have a particular comment, not knowing the medical details or you know, the woman's family's wishes.
And then, Senator, can we get your reaction? Obviously, the news came out yesterday about President Joe Biden and cancer. Just, do you have any reaction to that diagnosis and what he's facing?
Well, I wish President Biden a full and swift recovery. Of course, that's a frightening diagnosis for anybody. My heart goes out to him and his family.
Any more questions from the press? Okay, thank you all.
Okay, thank you so much.